Welcome, everyone. Center of Light. Remember, have you been checking yourself every day? Are you getting clear? Clarity is where it's at. That's what you should want to become. A crystal ball? Well, sure. Maybe you can tell your own future when you do. Crystal clarity. Hello, COVID-19. And because of lack of, we find ourselves locked down. What are you doing in this lockdown? Are you locking in to win? What are you trying to win? Seriously, ask yourself the question, what am I trying to win in all this craziness? The prize is yourself. You are the prize. Surprise. Today, oh my God, let me do something real quick with my camera. I'm getting some brick wall on my head. So today, at least an hour ago, was not good for me. I chose something that's been with me for 4 months that softened my heart, a beautiful little kitty cat. I'm going to get emotional. Right above my head, she is. Her name is Crystal. I gave her away. I gave it to a family, 2 young toddlers, and a little bitty puppy. Because I'm so busy with my work, my play, my love, my passion. Homecoming Crossing the Bridge to the Soul, which I am posting the link to. Order that now. It has been released as of last week. It's doing very, very well, especially in the UK, number 6. And I'm still pushing. I'm giving birth. Lamaze. Right? I'm breathing something into life. Are you breathing yourself into life the best you possible? So I gave this beautiful little light to a family because I'm so busy. I cannot give her the attention, trust me, not only deserves, but requires. So that put me in a really respectful, reverent space, sad space. But I don't want your sympathy. Her 4 months with me and my son, I'm just simply grateful. Just simply grateful. Today, I was wrong last month. I don't know why. It hit me last month on the 13th. But today is 32 years I've been in Memphis, Tennessee. I left South Louisiana. Had the rock star in the eyes. And I had it. And when it went away, I realized how much I really didn't want it. Because I get to do everything I do now. Son, 4 months with a beautiful kitty cat. Writing books, sitting here doing this thing, which is my passion. I love it. I have a fantastic show for you tonight. John Hunt's Publishing. They have some amazing authors. These people don't jack around at all. Everyone, it's like they intuitively know who to sign on for a book deal. It's not like, I'm sure they do have that intuitive prospect. Tonight is no different. I want to see if I can get his name right. I love attempting people's names because I see people in the forum from all over the world, and sometimes I had a girl in here last night from Austria. I did my best 3 or 4 times. It wasn't even close. Tonight, my guest is Alfonso Colasuonno. Sounds like a movie star name, doesn't it? Well, he is a star, and it's all right. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today on Center of Light Radio. I'm coming back strong. I'm looking forward to doing more and more interviews. I needed a break. Let me tell you about Alfonso Colasuonno. I think I got it right. I can't wait to see what he says. The book of the magical, mythical unicorn. I kept thinking mystical, but I like both those words. Maybe one of them's in parentheses. Parentheses. The book of the magical, mythical unicorn. Alfonso Colasuonno has had 65 works on short fiction and poetry published in 35 literary magazines. He was the co-founder and the editor-in-chief, oh my God, this guy can write, I love it, of Beautiful Losers magazine, belowmag.com, a literary magazine dedicated to poetry, short fiction, and nonfiction. Alfonso instructs aspiring and emerging writers on how to advance their literary careers through this influential blog, The Literary Game, and you can find that at theliterarygame.wordpress.com. Alfonso earned his Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing at Beloit College. At Beloit, Alfonso studied under the tutelage of many acclaimed writers, including capital Pen, P-E-N, / Barbara Goldsmith Freedom, to write award winner, here we go, Bei Dao, and two-time winner of the American Fiction at Clint. I lost my screen. I love it. At Clint, McCown. And for more about my guest tonight on Center of Light Radio, here's a little bit more about him, what I just read. Also, his link to his website. Please go to his page and stomp all over and make a huge stink. Welcome to Center of Light Radio, Brother Alfonso.
Yeah, Keith, it's really great to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking for a good time here.
And ain't nothing but a good time.
So, I'd sing along with you, but I think your viewers and listeners want to be hearing me join in.
So you are a writer. Let me ask, let's have some fun. When did this begin to happen? You know, I failed English 4 times. The reason I quit school. And I failed typing twice. And now I'm an author, published author. So how did this come about for you? Did you have some fanciful idea? Did you write a few stories in school and you got some A's and I said, oh, maybe I have something here? How did this all unfold for you, sir?
You know, it didn't start with A's in school. At Beloit, I had some professors said, don't make a career out of this, but I used that as fuel to keep getting better. And, you know, they say you got to either get better or bitter, so I just chose the better way. But we started this book, the Book of the Magical Mythical Unicorn, through my co-author, Vakasha Brenman, who was unfortunately departed in May from this dimension. But yeah, we have karmic history is probably the shorthand I describe it. I was looking for a new book. I'd never worked in anything in the supernatural or the esoteric, but I've always been fascinated in it. And a mutual friend set us up together. And when I first met Vakasha, she was not only an amazing person and spiritually minded, but she was a trip. I never saw anyone who could smoke as many cigarettes in an hour as her. And I'm a former smoker myself, but I couldn't catch up with that. So I knew she was a fun one, and I knew it'd be a lot of fun working with her. And I wanted to learn quite a bit more about the unicorn. And so we just started working together, and from there, it was a process of a number of years. And now we're where we are right now.
I had an amazing editor. As I told you before, I failed this in school and failed that in school. And I had a manuscript, the bestseller, The Divine Principle. And when it was a manuscript, it had 90-something thousand words in it. So she comes over one day by a friend who she wanted to borrow something, a videotape, I believe, about sexual tantra called Bliss. I don't know this lady. So she comes over. She's a bag lady kind of lady, and she's proud of it. And I tell you what, bro, she was brilliant. Oh, my God, was she brilliant in the English language. And she said, can I look at your manuscript? And I was like, sure. She goes, are you good at critique? I said, yeah, I am. And when she started, I wasn't. She says, can I play with this? I said, what do you mean play with it? She goes, can I edit it for you just to give you a sample? And I said, she goes, don't worry, you got another copy of this. I said, yes, ma'am. She says, and boy, when she put her hands in it, she reduced a page of dialogue to a paragraph. She says, now read it. She taught me very well. She taught me about sort of like Michelangelo. Was it Michelangelo? The sculpturing the statue of David by removing stuff. Is this part of what you learned in your schooling about writing and being, in other words, we write out things, we mold things, and then after the ideas there, you start pulling away the extraneous stuff. Is that how you go about it, sort of?
Yeah, that's definitely how Vakash and I went about it with the Book of the Magical Mythical Unicorn. But that was not really a process I learned too much in college. When we were just starting back then, when I was just starting back then, it's just sort of getting my feet wet. But I always like to say that my co-author Vakasha was a better instructor in terms of writing than any professor I had. And I had great professors at Beloit. But yeah, she was just amazing at chipping away the gold from what we had. We always joke that we'd love to release a second version of the book after the first one's out for a while, with just the blooper reels from earlier drafts, because it's definitely a process of getting it right and getting the message in a concise way. It's easy to understand, and yeah, it definitely takes some time and some chipping away to get that masterpiece out there.
Why unicorns? I mean, was this a passion of hers and you kind of thought it was cool? And so let's get into what is the book of the magical mythical unicorn.
Sure, yeah. So Vakasha, unicorns were kind of her life's passion from the age of 30 and over the span of multiple decades going forward from there. And she had started this book actually in the 1990s. She hired a great researcher, but just couldn't find the writer, to work with. And so, you know how projects go. She kind of tabled it for a while, and when the unicorns started reemerging and started showing those signs back into the public consciousness around 2015, mutual friends set us up together, and I've been interested in all sorts of things, mystical and otherwise, UFOs, ghosts, all sorts of paranormal, supernatural, mystical kind of beings and phenomena. But it was a real kind of knowledge gap for me about unicorns. I didn't know barely anything about unicorns, and what I did know was wrong, as I learned from writing this book with Bakasha. And but I really wanted to learn a lot more about it, just because I could be a dilettante in terms of some of the other topics. I knew enough to hold a conversation, but if people were started talking about unicorns, I just kind of stayed silent. And I'm a pretty talkative guy, so I'm not used to really staying silent too often. So it was really a great opportunity to learn about something in the course of a project that I was really just wanting to know more about, because you know about the unicorn. Everyone knows about the unicorn in terms of the popular imagination, but at least for me, I didn't know too much about what the real, true story was behind it. And so when Vakasha said, "Hey, kid, I'm looking for a good writer," I said, "I don't know if I can give you a good writer, but I can give you me." And yeah, from there we just had a lot of fun working on the book together, and just moved from there.
So what did you delve in before? Like when you said the spiritual stuff, some of the way out stuff. What was some of that way out stuff, bro? I'm absolutely curious. So I want to know who I'm talking with.
Oh, absolutely. That's a good question. I mean, really, one of the earliest memories I had as a child was, when we're kids, we all get those family gatherings. You get 20, 30 people there together. Everyone's there having a good time catching up. And I didn't want to socialize. What I did was I just took that book right off my aunt's shelf. It was I think a Time Life book all about the supernatural. Just went into a guest room and just started digging in. And from there, just going in the supermarkets, any sort of book on UFOs or whatever, I just pick it up. And it was a really, really I just started delving in wherever I could in terms of these topics. But as a writer, I just never really had an idea on my own that was in this kind of guise. And I never really had the opportunity in terms of a partnership until I met Picasso to work in anything like this. Always been fascinated, but just the opportunity had never, arisen right there for a project of this sort. So when I met Picasso and she told me, "Hey, we've got this great idea for a unicorn book. We got to start from scratch. We've got this mountain of research. Let's get to it, kid." I just jumped on it. It was a real fun thing to do, and yeah, I didn't look back after she gave the offer and we started working together.
Can you share with me some of your research? What rabbit holes, unicorn holes did you go into, and what was it like for you to discover such things? Like, oh wow, this is refreshing. I kind of believe this kind of story is very possible, because some people call it make believe, and some people just requires them simply to believe.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you going in there and playing this game with yourself to realize the potential and the likeliness on some level, because most myth comes from some level of truth. And so I'm curious to know, I'm really into people. I'm really into their imagination, expansion base. So what was it like for you to be in that place of learning, so to speak? That would be the real college there.
I mean, yeah, it definitely was like a second college. It was a total learning experience. Vakasha told me a little bit about it, but she liked to keep it a secret before we got started. There's just so much to it. So I didn't really know what to expect. What I was just stunned by the entire process of research. When you think about all the earliest known civilizations, we're not even talking about unknown civilizations that haven't been fully proven, or at least, by more skeptical sorts like Atlantis and things like that. But if you talk about the civilizations that everyone agrees on, like the Sumerians, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Chinese civilizations, Indus Valley, all of them, I had no idea that the unicorn had a presence in the art, early literature, the culture, the traditions. I thought it was mostly a British thing, and I didn't even know too much about. I thought like,
Right. So did
okay,
I.
maybe it's like Scotland only, or maybe the UK as a whole. No, no, no. It is not. We saw it in every continent, even in North America and South America in terms of cave drawings, but all over the place in Europe, in Asia, and in Africa. And yeah, I mean, it was just a total education. I had no idea that the unicorn was in um, all of the major spiritual traditions that a lot of people fall into, all of the cultures, all of the time periods. And I mean, if you go back and, really before the last 200, 300 years, records are not common. So the fact that like some of the early civilizations like Sumerians and Assyrians and Babylonians have documented evidence that cannot be refuted about the unicorn, I was shocked, honestly, just seeing that from the research and then from the process of turning that research into parts of our book.
So, what you've discovered in your research, though there are all this common denominator, this thread in all these different civilizations and time periods, do they say the same thing about the unicorn, what it represents, where it's from, all those little things, or is it a commonality as would give the truth of the unicorn life? Because everyone's saying the same thing when this was before pre-travel kind of ideas. So is it the same story being told?
Basically, yeah. There's always kind of a little bit of a unique cultural spin on it, depending on where it comes from. But basically, it all comes down to the same story, unless, and there's been a few times in history where certain cultures or certain individuals, for various reasons, misrepresented the unicorn, either intentionally or just out of ignorance. But for the ones who truly understood the unicorn and understood the symbolism of it and what it represented, um, there's a pretty high level of consistency across culture. So, it's not like in China there's a totally different understanding of what the unicorn can do, as opposed to in present day Sudan. All of these cultures are always talking about the unicorn's horn. It's many processes. It's many things it could do for healing and also for
Yeah, I was going to
spiritual
ask you.
guidance.
I was
Yep.
going to ask you. So, what can it do? Because that's a pretty powerful question from a guy like you who wrote a book about a unicorn or unicorns. People know a unicorn has a point on its head and it farts rainbows and things
Well,
like that. But what can the unicorn do?
I mean, I saw some documented things that are just completely amazing. Like it could even potentially, according to some sources, raise people from the dead. One thing that's always consistent is its work as an anti-poison. So whether in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, the horn or parts of the horn have always been used to really counteract poison. I mean, and it goes even into more minor
Whoa, 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 whoa!
things.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
excuse me. You
Oh,
said
sure. Yeah.
have been. You said have been used. There are stories you found where people have used unicorn horn parts, or was it still all mythical kind of thing? But these are actual stories that claim to be factual.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to the unicorn's horn being used, there are many cases where parts of the horn were used. The full horn was always kind of relatively uncommon to have, but fragments of it, even the tiniest fragment, were used. There were active markets all throughout Europe. There were enterprising, merchants who would have a little bit of unicorn horn, and they'd sail. And this is not our modern globalized world. They would sail over into markets like in the Near East and in the Far East to sell it, and people all over the world, This is around like the 15th and 16th
Yeah, that was
centuries.
my question. When was this? 15 to 16. Okay. So they're saying that this unicorn, this magical, mythical creature, was actually here in this 3D plane, not in some realm like the dragon as the protector of the China and all that. But they're saying, or are you saying from your study, that this creature, beautiful creature, in its purity, at least even freaking metaphorically, that's just delicious, right? But this creature actually lived on the earth in the ways that we could see bandwidth with our senses. Yes?
It's sort of yes and no is how I describe it. So the unicorn is an interdimensional creature. It's been around since the absolute beginning. I mean, there's sort of the whole kind of nature of the Chinese way, ancient Chinese religion, of how this earth was formed. Their creator god, Pangu, worked with the unicorn, the phoenix, the dragon, and the tortoise to chip away at the nothingness and create our world. There are stories about the unicorn being in Eden with the first man and the first woman, and that's sort of and after that period of time in Eden, that's where it started to become an interdimensional creature. So when we came down to what I call Schoolhouse Earth here in third dimension, we all have things to learn in this life. None of us are finished products. I certainly am not. And with all of us here in this imperfect world, um, the unicorn was given a choice by the creator. It could either stay in this higher vibrational reality and just enjoy that pure bliss, or it could come and when needed, when appropriate, into our dimension to help us or to come to certain individuals, or as I believe in the near future, come to us entirely, as a human species. So there are times when the unicorn can pop in, sort of like a cameo guest or something, is maybe a good way to describe it.
I love when you said it had the choice to stay in pure bliss. I always use those words. The place we're all trying to get to, at least many of us are, is back to the space of bliss. When was the last of the unicorn cited stories that have some credit to it about when was the last one seen? I'm sure it's like a Bigfoot. It's the perfect hide and seek champion. And also, what culture talks of the unicorn the most and or first? Which one really leans heavy into it more so than the others?
Those are two great questions. I mean, the first thing I'll say is that, in terms of like recorded history, for mainstream historians, you're only going back about 6,000 years when the first civilizations really started, just in terms of what we know and what everyone generally agrees on. No one's going to disagree that the Sumerians existed or the ancient Egyptians existed. You'd have to be really out there, to say something like that. So what's really interesting is it wasn't one dominant culture. It wasn't like the Sumerians for 1,000 or 1,500 years had a monopoly on the unicorn, and then just because of their influence, all of a sudden all these other cultures sort of started talking about the unicorn. What we see is the earliest known civilizations, China, Indus Valley, Sumeria, and Egypt. Those four civilizations all had the unicorn from their origin 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. And so what I think it lends a lot of credence to these legends about the unicorn in terms of creation myths, either for the universe or for our origin, because all of these early civilizations from the very beginning had stories or artifacts even, that are in museums today that depict the unicorn. And I mean, it doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't come from nowhere. And there's definitely a truth behind it. Now, in terms of when was the last real sighting, um, it's been kind of elusive in the last 200 years. For a long time, we had quite a bit more unicorn sightings. Right now, they're not common, and certainly not to, at least as far as I know, any real noteworthy figure. We don't hear anything about Barack Obama or Donald Trump having seen a unicorn. At least not that I know. Maybe if I know those two guys, I'd hear that story. But you know, but the last real story that I can think of offhand is one of the biggest skeptics, a mathematician, a philosopher, someone in the academy, With even back then, all the associations with it in terms of skepticism for anything supernatural. This is a guy by the name of Leibniz, and this is about 200 years ago. He saw a skeleton of a unicorn in Germany, and for all his life, when he heard people talk about the unicorn or anything related, just thought it was completely ludicrous until he saw it himself. And there's been sightings all throughout history with all sorts of figures that, just by virtue of their importance in world history, their records have survived. We saw Julius Caesar on a military expedition. Talk about, the opposite of spiritual. Now sometimes we need, to go to battle for good reasons, but you don't really think about war in terms of spirituality or the unicorn. Julius Caesar saw the unicorn on an military expedition in Germany. Genghis Khan, talk about the one of the most fearsome men in history. He saw the unicorn. Actually, it prevented him from going into India and conquering it. Conquered all of East Asia, all of Central Asia, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, India, completely untouched. The unicorn came before him, and he took that as a sign to not step foot with his men in that land. And I could go on. I mean, you're talking back to the earliest Chinese emperor, Fu Xi. The Chinese language created or given to him by the unicorn, the symbols from the Chinese language started appearing on a unicorn's back, and his problem of helping his people communicate was solved. So, I mean, there's a lot of historical evidence from a lot of really reputable figures who have seen the unicorn or encountered in some way throughout time. And it's just kind of incredible. I did not know any of this when I started work on the Book of the Magical Mythical Unicorn with Bakasha, but I was just blown away by all the things we found out.
Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here tonight. I am posting in the chat room, the forum, some information about my guest tonight, Alfonso Colasuonno. Bro, did I get that right?
You got it right. You got it right the second time and the fourth time right now. So that's 50%. That's better than like 99.9% of people. So
you and I met.
A lot of respect for that.
You and I met just over an hour ago, and I think in that hour you kind of got a feel of my personality, and so you probably would understand why I would ask this question. Has anyone ever asked you this question? The question is, so we're speaking about the unicorn. Do you believe?
I get that question all the time.
Oh, do you? Okay, so do you believe it?
I do, actually, but I didn't always feel this way. Like when I first started work with Bakasha on the Book of the Magical Mythical Unicorn, I kind of took this as something, because with anything supernatural, I always kind of put one foot in and one foot out. I want to see evidence for myself.
Hokey pokey.
Sort of like doubting Thomas, and when I started work with Bakasha on the Book of the Magical Mythical Unicorn, because she had a lot of problems with COPD in her later years, the times that we worked together, and also mobility, it really necessitated me being up in New York City in her apartment, working very closely together with her for the creation of the book. And one of the first things she told me when I basically moved in with her is a lot of people who come to my apartment, they're known to have encounters with the unicorn. And, with being really excited to go on this project with her, I didn't want to say anything sarcastic or anything, but I kind of took it with a grain of salt. First week, saw nothing, just had a good time getting to know her and starting work on the book. 7 to 10 days into staying in Bakasha's apartment, I went to bed pretty early. It must have been about 10 at night. And, now I'm more of a night owl, but back then, not so much. Went to bed at 10, fell asleep right away. And 3 hours later, I wake up. I'm fully awake. It's not lucid dreaming. It's nothing like that. I didn't hit the bottle of Old Granddad too hard or anything like that. And all of a sudden, this was the weirdest thing. I'd only had one other supernatural event that ever happened in my life. The unicorn's horn started materializing before my eyes. It was spiraled. It was multicolored. And I told Bakasha, the next morning when she woke up, hey, you wouldn't believe what I saw. And she just started laughing because she was very intuitive. I'd even say psychic. She knew exactly what I saw. And she just laughed because she was like, are you still skeptical? And I told her, no, you can't be skeptical after you see something with your own eyes.
So she must have some unicorn juju, some woo-woo, some voodoo. Because maybe, or has she told you, share with you any of her stories? You know, sometimes along with stories comes people's past experience from another time. Maybe she was a fairy. Maybe she was an angelic fairy. Maybe she lived in this magical, mystical awareness space as to why she's now here and she has this love for unicorns. Has she ever delved into any of that and say, hey, this is why they're so important and so prevalent and present with me? Did she ever say anything like that?
Yeah, actually, one story she told me about growing up over in Trinity, North Carolina. Her family had a real lot of property, and she'd just be out in the gardens a lot of times, just playing. And there was a unicorn, a full unicorn. I only got the horn. I got shortchanged. I only saw the unicorn's horn appear. She had a full encounter with the unicorn as a 6 or 7 year old girl. And from there, from that very early age, she had that experience, and she knew the unicorn was real. And for a while, she started, doing a more traditional kind of life. She was in public relations, got a degree in business administration, and was married, and had a pretty normal life. And then she had her walk-in experience, and from there, basically the last 4 decades of her life became the life's mission of getting the true story of the unicorn out there. And Vakasha and I, we did a great job with this, but I always like to say we were just the channels. We were just the people that the unicorn, for whatever reason, chose to tell its story. But this is a lot different from other stuff that I've written. A lot of it just naturally came to us, was intuited. The unicorn was guiding us throughout the entire process. In many things that just by our own abilities we couldn't do, or we couldn't understand. The unicorn just always opened the doors and opened that door of understanding, and it just basically spearheaded this entire process for us. And it was like, I'm going to take you guys for a fun ride, and it certainly did.
So this is a fiction, yes? Obviously.
Well,
or is it just from research? In other words, is there a storyline that was fashioned to this book to paint a time with some other people?
That's a good question. So we kind of like give people in the Book of the Magical Mythical Unicorn a little bit of everything. So, for example, if you want to just get a great children's book to tell some stories to your kids, there are fictionized myths in the book that that are perfect for bedtime stories or for the young at heart as well. But there's also documented historical evidence that cannot be refuted for the historians, or maybe some of the more skeptical types who are just like, oh, this guy's talking about unicorns. I don't know. This might be a little too much. Well, you know what? Go when you pick up a copy of the Book of the Magical Mythical Unicorn and check it out. Do the research for yourself. We have an extensive works cited list in the back of our book, and just because I'm saying it, please, you don't have to believe me. Go do the work for yourself if you're curious. And then also for people who are very much in terms of the mystical or the esoteric nature, we get into a little bit about some of those things, and also what the unicorn represents, and what it will be doing going forward into the future.
I think stories like this are fantastic. Be it a story, be it the reality. When you're 10 years old and younger, Santa Claus isn't a story. It is a reality. And people have no issue or compunction whatsoever to give their kids a ride in the sleigh, at least till 10, or however the child or the family feels appropriate to say, okay, hey, John Doe, we've been buying you stuff all year for the last 10 years. It opens up people's imagination. It allows them to think beyond the confinement, beyond the walls, beyond the self-induced prison of the mind. We live in the crevices of the mind. At least that's where we think the real us is. And so it's very difficult in living in such a way to live with hope, belief in something magical, mystical, powerful, beyond our own level of understanding, because beyond our own level of understanding is where our salvation lies. Would that be true for you, sir?
I mean, I definitely say so. And I also just got to say, it's kind of funny earlier in the show when you said magical, you almost were going to say a magical mystical unicorn. That is a funny synchronicity, because Vakasha, even as the co-author of this book, the one who spearheaded this project, Vakasha would automatically slip into accidentally calling her own book, the book of the magical mystical unicorn. So I think there's definitely something to that. I just had to get that in there.
Give us an idea. I mean, I don't want you to give away the book because I want people to go out there and support your beautiful lifelong work. Give us an idea of the shape of this book, and I don't mean rectangle. Give us the idea of the story and what they can expect when they open it up, when they get into the meat and potatoes, and when they get out on the way out for the dessert. What is? Give us an idea. Give us a trailer.
Sure. So people, you got to start with an introduction. So for people who have literally no idea about what the unicorn represents, like I did when I started work on this book with Bakasha. We start with an introduction just to give the basic nature of what the symbolism of the unicorn represents, what it is and what it can do. Then we go really just take you around the world, basically, starting with the unicorn in India and China and going all across the world in terms of a global look at the different cultures and how they have had stories and legends and evidence about the unicorn in their cultures. And then we go into a very, very interesting chapter all about how the unicorn has been represented in the arts, not just visual art, with people like, masters of visual art like Raphael. We're going into modern day music, Lady Gaga, 2 Chainz. They have songs about the unicorn. We go into movies. I like good comedy. I was always a Three Stooges fan as a kid. The Three Stooges have a movie that features a unicorn in space. So we give people really a look at all the different depictions. Of course, we had to draw a line somewhere. So for all of the filmmakers and authors and artists, sorry, it's not a slight if we didn't feature your work. Then we go into the esoteric meaning. So now you have all this stuff about the different cultures and what they've seen with the unicorn. A little bit about the artistic depictions, and you have the basic understanding from that introduction. Now we go into from 101 class to 301 and give them the deeper understanding of what this unicorn symbolizes and how it connects to a lot of other traditions in alchemy, with astrology and astronomy and so many other things. And then we really just go into the conclusion, which is how the unicorn is reemerging and what that reemergence will.
It is reemerging. I see
Yeah.
that. I see that in the social mainstream. It is reemerging. Since all these cultures you mentioned have ridden unicorns as the truth, I'm sure because of your book, all the different. And here in America, we say unicorn. In English, we say unicorn. What do they say in China? What do they say in India? What do they say in Egypt? Do you have these names, sir?
Yes, I do actually. In China, if you say the word unicorn, you might get a blank stare. Over there, it's the Qilin. In India, it's usually called the Risha. Other cultures for example, in Mongolia, it's called the Po. The Greeks would call it Monokeros. In the Middle East and the Arab world, it's called the Karkadan. So there's a lot of different names that the unicorn goes by, but it's always the same creature. And different cultures have a little bit of a different understanding. It's just like it's kind of similar to you got 10 friends. You might present a little bit of a different side to yourself to each of these people because they're all different people, but you're still the same essence right there. That might be a good way to really understand how the unicorn kind of has a little bit of a unique spin depending on the culture and the people that it interacts with, but it is the same presence, regardless of the culture.
So we call it unicorn. Someone wants to understand what a unicorn is. They go to the dictionary or wiki and they look it up. And basically what we're doing when we do such things is we're deducing it down to its essence. So India calls it Orisha. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Orisha. So when they go to the Indian version of wiki or the dictionary and they deduce it down to find out its essence that we can understand as it's told through resourceful books, scriptural books. Actually, Webster's Dictionary is the greatest spiritual book ever written. Trust me when I tell you. It's absolutely clear about everything. So what I'm asking is, in such deduction from English, unicorn, India, unicorn, China, unicorn, Mongolia, unicorn, in its deduction, does it actually unfold literally the same way?
Let's see. Now, could you say a little bit more about what you mean by unfold in the same way?
Does it define the unicorn the same from India to America to China? When you look it up in said dictionaries and said resourceful books. I did sort of ask you this question earlier, is the common denominator, but is it actually described or the story told the same way?
Now, the story definitely takes different guises in terms of how it's presented because of the different figures, the different spiritual traditions that are connected with it. In terms of the dictionaries, I gotta get a stack of dictionaries in Hindi, stack of dictionaries in Mandarin, because in answer to that question about the dictionary definitions, I don't really have an answer for you. I want to be honest, I don't have an answer about that. But in terms of the different cultures, yeah, it definitely takes uh, you know again, like kind of a little bit of a unique spin on it, but it comes down to the same essence.
Are you part of a group, you and your friend? I forgot her name. What's her name?
Vakasha, yep.
Vakasha.
Vakasha, yep. Like the
What is her
Akasha.
background?
Her
Is that
background,
important to the? Is that important to us? What is her background?
I guess it really depends, but she has a background as a off Broadway producer, very successful visual artist for many years. Just did a lot of different things, and this was her first book too. We created it together, and unfortunately, she's not here at the finish line. She passed away in May,
Hmm.
but she is looking down on us and just really
Riding
excited
a
about
unicorn.
everything. She's
She's
riding
riding
the
a
unicorn.
unicorn. So I guess let me refine my question. What is her? What was her background? Her family origin? Because I'm trying to see if there's a lineage here that as to why she might reincarnate it in certain family with a last name of such that might point to some very magical, mythical alignments.
Great question. Yeah, so she is descended mostly from British colonists to the U.S. And just sort of like what I said before, I had any education on the unicorn. I mostly assumed that it was a British thing. And the Brits definitely do have a lot of amazing history with the unicorn. I would say, I don't want to pit the British against the Indians, against the Chinese, against any other culture. It's not like that. But they do have an extremely rich tradition with the unicorn. I mean, when you look at Scotland, for example, that is the national symbol of Scotland is the unicorn. The
Dig that.
symbol, yeah. So I would not be surprised if, because of her British heritage, if that's a big reason why she was drawn in this life to work with the unicorn and to tell its story through the book of the magical mythical unicorn, a work that really she's been working on for 3 decades. So we finally got it done right past the finish line, I guess, before she got out of this dimension.
Have you thought about jumping seat and go and do some real research to the old world, to the old country, to see what you can actually dig up through some of the elders and the ancients that still live there from stories being passed down?
I would love to do that if the opportunity
Do
ever
it.
arises. I would love to do that because going in, if we had the resources to go to China, go to India, go pretty much anywhere in the world and really talk to some of those elders, people who have been around a while, people not so much influenced by the skepticism of the modern world and the sort of uniform culture we're all kind of, or not all of us, but some of us are falling into. I would love to speak to some of these people and hear more in depth their own traditions because we were going off the historical records, but to get that extra bit of ability of hearing the stories, firsthand, that's something I'd love to do, and that might be book two somewhere
That
down
might
the
be your
line.
first. That might be your first movie, bro.
Maybe you're
I
about
mean,
the
you can
guy
make it a
here.
documentary. That would just be delicious, bro.
It's funny that you said that because before Vakasha passed away, we were talking very closely, not about writing another book together, but about doing a documentary together. So,
I
um,
could see it in you. You would be great at it. Because I know your method. You're very methodical. You're very thorough. That's obvious to me. You have that OCD like me. There's not going to be a comma unmarked. I get it. I love it. And
no,
you would bring across a fine piece of work, especially interviewing some of the older people and some of the stories that would be on film as they're telling them. That would just be just really cool.
yeah, I'd love to do that. And I don't know what the next challenge is going to be after this year. I'm having a lot of fun sharing the word about the Book of Magical Mythical Unicorn with the world. But what 2021 holds in store, I don't quite know just yet. So I'm just going to trust the universe. It hasn't led me astray yet. And if that's the right thing to do, it will happen. So I'm just gonna wait and see.
Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, hanging out with Alfonso Colasuonno. Right? Did I get it?
You got it better than last time.
What was it? Say it again for me, please.
Sure. It's Colasuonno.
Colasuonno.
Yeah, you got it perfectly.
Colasuonno. I have to think like your culture. Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, hanging out with Alfonso, and we've been talking about his book, the book of the magical, mythical, mystical unicorn, and any other really cool words you want to add to it. I'm sure he wouldn't mind it. Make sure you go to his website. I just put it in the forum. Go stomp all over his page and make a big noise. Let him know that you exist. Support artists. Artists are the way of the world. Everyone is an artist. Everyone has art inside of them. If you're a cook, you're an artist. If you're a parent, you're an artist. There's an art to living your life. Are you following the rules? When you become a master at your art, at your craft, then you can break the rules because you know the theory. And the theory is nothing on what you glean from doing something and making love to it and massaging it and getting all the juice out of the rack. Because you're the one that becomes the molder, the sculptor, the creator when you do that. Same with writing books, same with playing music. And I love seeing people like you, Alfonso, diving into something and diving in it so much. That's why in the radio green room, I asked you, I said, bro, just a heads up, when that box of books comes and you open up that box, there's a feeling, a spirit, if you will, that's truly going to jump in you. And you're going to go, good for you.
I'm really looking forward to that day. I mean, it's about 2 weeks away. Depending on where you order from, it could be as early as August 28th to September 1st. But I'm looking forward to getting that first box of books. I know that shipping sort of gets a little slower right now, but I'm just really looking forward to it. I've written short stories before and poetry, but this is my first time at the dance right here. With the book, and I love it, and I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know what the feeling is yet because I've just never been there before, but I think it's going to be pretty magical, pretty mystical, mythical, whatever you want to call it. I think it's going to be a great feeling.
May the great unicorn bless you, bro. Is there anything you want to leave us with? Anything that you feel you want to share with the listening audience about your book, about anything, whatever suits you?
Absolutely. One of the most important things I want to share with your audience is, our website is theunicornbook.com. And what I really, really encourage everyone, after you check out the book, if there's things that we missed, just evidence, whether you know about it firsthand or just sources that you've seen that maybe just missed our radar. And we were pretty comprehensive, but there's always things that you might miss. If you see something about the unicorn, you know something about the unicorn that we didn't cover, please share. There's a contact form right on that site, theunicornbook.com. And if you know something about the unicorn that Prakash and I didn't know or didn't present, please share it with us. I want this to be a continuing dialogue. If you know anything about the unicorn or if you want to talk unicorn, just reach out. There's a contact form. And I love talking unicorn with people. So
let's talk unicorn. What's up, dog? Let's talk unicorn.
Absolutely.
Bro, I really enjoyed my time with you and learning something. Usually with people who sit across from me from this chair, I know a lot about as to why we have such dialogue. And just sitting here, taking it in, riding your ride as you scoot over and let me sit in the seat with you. Thank you, bro. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. And you're always welcome here on Center of Light Radio.
Absolutely. I'd love to take you up on that offer in the future. And it's been an absolute blast. It's a lot of fun tonight.
Everyone say goodnight to my friend now, Mr. Alfonso Colasuonno.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I love it. Keith Anthony Blanchard here, Center of Light Radio. Make sure if you want another good read, go to Amazon.com, look up Homecoming Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. Keith Anthony Blanchard. What is that? What is coming home? Key word that Alfonso and I talked about just a little bit ago. It's called bliss. Sounds hard to get there, doesn't it? Well, when you believe that, you've overshot your target. It's not hard at all. It's not a doing something. You don't go do something. You simply sit and you be blissful. It's not an arduous task. There's nothing else to it. There are different ways of doing it. There are ways of not doing it. I strongly suggest we pretty much mastered the ways of doing shit. I say now work on the art of doing nothing.